How do you know who I am?
How do you think?
Mother Abagail?
All I know is that we dreamed of her and she was real.
She brought us all together to keep us safe in these uncertain times.
I had read in a piece for Vanity Fair, you had talked about Mother Abagail being a character you've been interested in playing for some time now.
Yeah.
And so I wondered if you could tell me a little bit about why she's always been someone that you wanted to play, and maybe hopefully what textures of her you wanted to bring out in this version of The Stand.
Well, I always wanted to do it because I always wanted to be in a Stephen King horror movie. And, you know, I've been reading him, you know, for a very long time. And there are not a lot of people of color in Stephen's books. And this was a woman of color who had the power of the Lord behind her. And so when they did it originally, you know, 30 years ago, I couldn't do it. I was on another film. And Ruby Dee did it. And I thought, well, there goes that opportunity. And yay, Ruby, it's wonderful. And you played her. She's, you know, fantastic. And then, you know, I heard rumor a couple of years ago that they were thinking about doing it again. And I was like, I'd like to do it. And one of the things we discovered is that the Mother Abagail of 30 years ago is vastly different than the Mother Abagail of today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the genesis of her is different in a lot of different ways, but she's flawed also. She's not quite so perfect and not quite so, you know, she's a little crazy in her own kind of mind. And as I guess one would be if one believed they were a prophet. You know, and then, you know, you have the dark man and it's like, okay, it's on now. So, you know, so all this other stuff is happening and they're sort of having their, you know, my guy's better than your guy confrontations.
You've kind of, over the years, played a lot of different versions of what I would consider like the good guy, the hero. I mean, of course, I'm thinking of Cyclops and I mean, the great Corny Collins and Hairspray, and
Very
Stu Redman.
Stu Redman, right? Stu Redman,
of course.
Corny Collins, same thing.
Different sides of the coin, yeah, of course. But I mean, Stu is in many ways that archetypal hero in The Stand, and so I kind of wondered what interests you in the role of Stu Redman and what you think he kind of has to say about this hero archetype.
My favorite heroes are the ones that are the most ordinary. You know, I don't, I find extraordinary in the ordinary. And I think Stu embodies that. I think he's, I find that exciting, that a virtuous human being who believes very strongly in doing what's right, not only for himself, but for humanity and society. You know, look, when we see Flag in Vegas, it's a lot of fun. and
that neon's alluring.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's sometimes the good guy, the ordinary good guy, is not as sexy. It's not a. But I've always found it compelling. I've always felt like we could, you know, it's easy to go to the, you know, it's easy to be bad. It's easy to go to the dark side, and it's much harder to, you know, to do the right thing when no one's looking, you know, and I think that's what kind of man he is. He's a man of strong character.
And I wondered if you could kind of just speak to who Franny is in this version and maybe how it kind of updates her character.
Well, the nature of the story, which is the one thing that I love so much about it and love about King as a writer, is that, you know, the original iteration of this story was, you know, came out in the 1970s, and then he updated in the 1990s. And then, you know, it was in a way updated in the miniseries, and then now it's been updated again. And he's had a big hand in that update. And so the story morphs with the time, you know, it's never been set in stone. Mm-hmm. As you know, when he released his book in the 90s of the unabridged version, you started to understand that this is something that will keep growing forever. And I really love that. And I think it gives us a lot of freedom to kind of take these foundational principles of what he's been trying to talk about, and kind of say, well, what would that look like in 2020, for example?
No, I think whenever you are tackling material that has been done before, there's always running the risk of upsetting the longtime fans, the loyal fans of the subject material. But I think Stephen and Ben and Josh and Taylor, all of the creative minds, they were very, very open and supportive of us trying to kind of put, like you said, our own spin on these iconic characters. And I think all of us who are fans of Mr. King's work wanted to come in and pay respect to the roles by not, changing them drastically. I think we all kind of stayed within the realms that they all had singularly, but with a little flavor of each of us, because we're all our own individuals, obviously. And yeah, we have our own ways of speaking and standing and things like that. And they were always really open to that. So that was definitely something that I noticed right away coming on board was their openness and their support.
Yeah, the cool thing about King's work is he does all the work for you. I mean, I've read this before, but he builds these incredibly complex characters that all of them are developed and flushed out, and you know so much about the little human things, the little tiny things that live in the cracks of their history that make them the humans they are, and that's incredibly rich material for an actor to get their hands on, and so much of the work is done for you. And the character, at least for me, is complicated and flawed and is tortured a bit. And her biggest opponent really is herself, and she is fighting against forces that are bigger than her. But ultimately, as we will see with all of the characters, the decision comes down to them. And I for me, it's more interesting playing a character like that. It's harder. It's more interesting.
Your character, Glenn, I've read in the past, Stephen King has talked about when he wrote this novel, Glenn was in a way a cipher for him to kind of share some of his philosophies and thoughts on who we are when this happens. And so I kind of wondered how that might affect your approach to the role in the performance, knowing you're, in a sense, playing at least an aspect of Stephen King himself.
Yeah, no, that was cool. I think you're right. I think there is a lot of Stephen in Glenn, and there is a voice of reason there. There's somebody who's questioning deity, and I don't think he believes in gnomes and elves, but Glenn is forced to kind of realign him with a reality that he's looking at, because there are these dark forces at play in this story that are kind of otherworldly, and he's forced to kind of grapple with that. But I just liked his kind of his kind of weed smoking, banjo playing, gypsy philosopher, dime store philosopher quality that he had. I didn't always understand what the hell he was talking about, but I always appreciated his kind of take on things, and like how he, had a thought on something and was different than the sort of conventional thinking at any given moment.
Lloyd is fascinating, and I think it was an Instagram post, you said that this is the favorite character, your favorite character you've ever played.
By far.
So tell me about that. What makes Lloyd so exciting to you?
Well, he was my favorite character in the book because he was such a, he was so evil, but he was kind of weirdly lovable because he was so pathetic, and your heart kind of went out to him because he was so desperate. And I spent a couple months working on this character, and I was inspired by actors like Gary Oldman, like especially earlier in his career, when he'd go out on a ledge and really commit to an insane physicality and voice, and so I spent a lot of time working on it, and then I got to set and I panicked and I freaked out, and I was like, I can't do this. They should fire me. They should get somebody else. This is too insane. I'm never going to get away with it. And then I went into a Subway sandwich, and I was like going to get food, and Like a Virgin came on the radio in the Subway, and I just started dancing to Like a Virgin, and it kind of possessed me, and everyone, as Lloyd, and everyone kind of looked at me, and I thought, oh, I got it. Now I got it. So Like a Virgin became like my anthem and was like a real key into playing Lloyd.
If you could talk a bit about how maybe Julie has evolved in this version. Are we seeing more of her than we've seen before?
We are, and that's something that I really enjoyed about this whole process, is that it was very fluid, and Julie evolved a lot. I mean, I didn't know anything other than the first episode when I first signed on to do it, or Julie's first episode. But then as it developed, she kept getting added to other moments and pieces, and she sort of became this constant in Flag's squad, which I really appreciated. You know, it was such a great element of being put in a room with just masters of their craft and people who are just having so much fun with these characters and really committing 100%, and then being allowed to play with them and being given, you know, each of these characters are so rich and they could have their own story in their own right. And then when you put them together, they bring out all of these different qualities in each other. And it really blossomed. And Julie's character was given a much fuller arc than I think we've ever seen before, which is really exciting.
The world is now a blank page, and it is there. You must make your stand.